I have good news for everybody, and the good news is that there is no slides. This is pure demo. This is pure code. Um, so I wanted to kind of start off by looking at Prism for Xamarin Forms, because the title, right, is kind of migrating over. So it's kind of good to take a quick look at where we're coming from, where we're going to. So this is basically the Prism template. So if you install Brian's Prism template pack in Visual Studio on Windows, no, we do not support Mac. It was a moving target and I didn't have time to keep up with it. But we do have the templates out there. Actually, good news, kind of a little squirrel, if you will. The Prism templates are now published to nuget.org, so you can actually use dotnet-maui to install those templates, and you can create those templates on Linux if you wanted to, I guess. But anyway, here we go. So this is a classic Prism for Xamarin Forms app that we have kind of known to grow to love. And, Prism has always been a framework that puts dependency injection as a first-class citizen. That's something that's brand new for Maui. It's great to finally see Maui adopting that. But we always kind of handled that within the application. So this is, of course, going to cause a migration kind of pseudo pain point, if you will, for people. Most classically, what you would see, even though there are other methods within Prism application that we kind of did support, the two that people most often would use is the on-initialized and the register types. The name's kind of obvious as far as what they do, but with Prism Maui, one of the things I wanted to do was to get people up and running as quickly as possible. And one of the ways that we accomplished that was by providing a Prism application in Prism Maui that still has these methods available. And we will call them for you if you do have a Prism application. Ironically, in Prism Maui, while the class Prism application does exist, it's not actually mandatory. In fact, when you look at the demo that we'll be doing a little bit later, or going through a little bit later, you'll actually notice that the application does not inherit from Prism application at all. It's just a standard .NET-MAUI application. Everything is done in Prism Maui in the app builder, which is really kind of exciting for me. One of the things you'll see here is we had just in the template, we would provide a registration for the Xamarin Forms navigation page, because if you didn't do that, it wasn't going to be available. I'm actually happy to say in Prism Maui, we now do this automatically. We detect whether or not you have registered a navigation page in Prism Maui. And if you have not, we'll provide you that default registration, both for the navigation page and for the tab page as well. Also, a beautiful thing, the Prism templates had actually included what was the Xamarin Essentials interfaces, which was a community package that kind of took Xamarin Essentials and then created an interface and pseudo implementation around that interface, so that way you maintained testability within your net standard library. And we now, luckily, in Maui, that's kind of a first-class citizen. So definitely something that's pretty exciting there. With that, I don't want to spend any more time on the legacy stuff. I think it's probably more fun to take a look at kind of what is new. So this is the demo app in the actual Prism Maui repo. And so you'll see here, we do a couple things. We add these modules. These are all done off of a builder. So let me just kind of collapse this down real quick. And you'll see that, all we've really done is we've changed use Maui app for use Prism app. We still pass our app in, and then we provide a delegate naturally for that to kind of build out and register anything that we might need to with Prism. We have our modules that get registered here. We maintain our register types. So if we wanted to migrate those over, these can come over from Prism application in forms over to our app builder here. We also have this really new exciting method called Register Global Navigation Observer. Now, I was not able to convince Brian to let me take a dependency on system.reactive in Prism Maui itself, but I was able to convince him to let me come out with a new package. So there is a Prism Maui.rx package that you can find on Nuget, and that exposes this Register Global Navigation Observer. So you get a really nice observable pipeline, and you'll see that here with this Add Global Navigation Observer. So this gives you that iObservable with a new navigation request context, and you can watch this now globally and get notifications anytime the navigation service, whether you're going forward or backward in your navigation stack, you're going to get those notifications of exactly what was done. And you can do a lot of different things here. So you can resolve your logger, for instance, and you can log navigation errors if you encountered some sort of exception. You could watch what the URI is, or anytime that you had like a go back, and you could kind of maintain what you believe your actual navigation URI is. So there's a lot of potential that you have with that. So I'm very, very excited that we get to see that now. And then the next thing is we kind of finish off with this on app start, which is a new concept in Prism Maui. So we do have an on initialized extension that you can add in here, and that gives you access to the container. So if you need to resolve a service and do some sort of initialization, you can do that. Maui also does have a kind of like a on initialized interface that you could take a look at as well if you needed to. But it's just very simple to do that here with Prism as part of your pipeline. The on app start, though, there's a whole bunch of different extension methods around this to kind of try to meet you where you are and kind of whatever makes it easier. So I could actually just provide a string with the URI that I want to navigate to. I could make it that simple. So if I just want to say, hey, go to the main page, it'll go to the main page. But if I want to take a little bit more control, I can use that navigation service and I can navigate. But you'll actually notice that here, this is not your normal navigate async kind of call. There's this new create builder. And this is something I've been wanting to do in Prism for quite a while. And I finally got around to doing it. And the navigation builder really makes navigating a lot easier for a couple of different scenarios. One is if it's really complex, because it doesn't take a whole lot before you just have this jumbled mess that's almost impossible to follow what exactly you were trying to do, especially if you start doing URI encoding, which you do need to do in many cases. It becomes just a complete nightmare. And so this kind of bridges that gap. So that way you can kind of keep things very clear, step by step. We're going to this page and then this page, and you can build out your query parameters for each one. You can pass, in like very simply, I can just come in here. We'll say, so we can say add parameter, and now I can just provide that key, and I can provide a value, and I don't have to new up brand new navigation parameters. I just pass in my key and my value. So there are a lot of little things like that that make it easier. The other one, which you actually might notice here, is I've had a lot of people over the years ask me about view model navigation. They say, I want, I know I'm not supposed to reference the page type from the view model. That breaks the MVVM pattern. So I want to be able to navigate to another view model. And the navigation builder actually allows you to do that now. So I can say, go to my splash page view model rather than giving it the navigation key. And it is going to kind of help construct what that navigation URI would be. So that way the navigation service is able to do what it needs to do. The next thing is you'll notice that this actually, if I hover over this, and I'm sorry that it's probably really small and impossible to read, but the kind of little message that you get when you hover over that will actually show you that that method returns a void. So if you've been around Prism for a while, you know that the navigation service is all asynchronous. We always return a task. But the navigation builder exposes both methods that are asynchronous and not. So whatever kind of context that you're in, it's able to kind of help you with. And again, I can handle my navigation globally. So if I had a navigation error, I can get that globally through the navigation observer. But I can also pass in a method here, and I can additionally handle it here. So I can get notification, or I can put a breakpoint in my code right here. So just a really, really nice little thing that you can do here. And yeah, so that's kind of the gist of it. If we kind of run through real quick what we have going on. And definitely if you have any questions, and Javier, feel free to jump in if people have questions. That way we don't have to come all the way back. Sometimes it's easier in context while I'm here. But
in fact, we have questions. Well, we have questions and feedback. So first of all, I'm going to share feedback that when it's lovely feedback, it's always nice to hear. Vijay shared that finally view model first navigation with hands up. So that's cool. And the question is about is from Burkus Cat, and the question is: are the interfaces plus the implementation for Essentials pre-registered in MAUI or in Prism? So not by default in MAUI, and I guess that's not in Prism too, because you are not using it or you don't require it, maybe?
Yeah, we don't use it in Prism, and we don't require it in Prism, so we don't register it. We really do try in every way to minimize what we register, so that way you can kind of keep your memory footprint as small as possible. And I've taken some effort here as well. There are things that I can do in Prism MAUI because it really has been written from kind of the ground up. So there are things I can do here that I couldn't do, say, in Prism Forms or in Prism for WPF or Prism Uno. So things like the module, like basically everything with modularity, I cannot do. Where I just don't register. I have to register those things, and then we have to check to see if you added modules. In this, I can more intelligently, check like, oh, okay, you provided me a delegate to register some modules, so I need to register the module services as well. So we really minimize that footprint there as we're going through things. But the nice thing is, and I kind of mentioned this before, so like, I think in the legacy template we had like app info. So we have app info, which is still our normal static that Prism developers hate with the static. But Essentials itself is fantastic. But the beautiful thing in MAUI is that, and it depends on the API. Hopefully they'll unify this, because I find it kind of annoying. Some of them are .current, some of them are .default. But we do have some static property on those types now that provide a static interface that we can reference and we can register. So it really becomes like, if I want that IAP info, okay, let's try cutting that again. If I want that IAP info, it really becomes as simple as, say, register instance, and now I have the interface and I can resolve the IAP info. So that is kind of a quick win. I didn't have to install any extra packages. It just kind of comes along for the ride with Maui, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, another thing I wanted to kind of mention here is that, Prism developers have kind of become accustomed to the Prism, Ioc abstraction layer that we have added over the years. And we did that, quite a while ago, because when I first got involved in Prism, we had multiple containers, and all of the docs were typically written around the Unity container. Some of them started to get written for the dry IOC container, and either way, people were getting confused on the subtle differences between how one container worked versus another. And we thought it would be a lot easier if we had a common API that abstracted the containers, kind of abstracted them away a little bit. So that way it would be easier for you to go from one project to the next and have the same exact API to work with. And on the platform layer, so we have the Prism core that kind of exposes that. But then on the platform layer, we have things like register for navigation, because here we have a generic constraint that is specific to whatever the view type is. And so, those still obviously exist for the container registry. But the really cool thing is, because Maui, takes this first class approach to dependency injection with Microsoft Extensions dependency injection, we do actually, that's a bad example because it's in another file. But we do actually take some, where is it? I think maybe here. Here we go. Here's one. But we do take kind of this first class approach to the iService collection. So, you'll see that whether you're working off of the iService collection or Prism's iContainer registry to register your services, you're still going to get all of the custom Prism extensions for things like registering your view for region navigation or page navigation. The dialogue service in Prism is kind of one of the few APIs that has not been migrated over yet to Prism Maui. That's going to come hopefully in the next release. But that is definitely coming, and those extensions will also exist both for iContainer Registry and iService Collection. And again, the goal is to try to make this as simple as possible for people, so we meet you where your needs are. If you're doing things like you're trying to use Microsoft extensions, for like the HTTP client or something like that, we want to make it easier for you to register those and still register everything else that you might need, kind of going forward there. And let's actually, I just saw, I think Vijay here had a question of why no support for Unity container. And the reason is actually really simple. The Unity container has decided to kind of go end of life. So,
So yeah, in fact, there are many questions related with what to use as containers. For example, the other one, it's does mean that we will be using the dry IOC container, or does it only use the default Maui dependency ingestion stuff?
Yeah, so for right now, the only supported container is dry IOC. In fact, just yesterday, Brian and I had a conversation around the fact that we're ultimately going to have to drop support entirely for the Unity container. So kind of like quick preview, because Prism has left the .NET Foundation, we'll be bumping the version to version 9.0, which really is only it's only an indication that we're changing the license holder. That's the only real difference. So instead of the license being owned by the .NET Foundation, it's now owned by Brian and myself. And as we're doing that, we're not going to drop Unity in Prism 9.0. I don't know what we'll do in 10.0 or beyond, but 9.0 will definitely have Unity. But Unity is no longer maintained. The repository is archived, and we don't know how long it will be feasible to maintain that. We do know that a lot of people have existing apps that are using Unity, and we do need to kind of provide a path forward for them to update for their WPF apps and Xamarin Forms apps, as long as that's around as well. But we won't be adding it for Uno, and we won't be adding it for Maui in 9.0. So
cool. So before jump to another point, there are more questions, mostly about the navigation builder. One thing, it's about the navigate parameter action on error is optional. So that was the question mostly.
So there are a number of extensions to try to make it easier on you. So there's actually, I believe, an on success and an on failure delegate that you can provide. And so, there are different extension methods depending on which one you want to maybe, or, what combination you want to provide. And that's kind of one of the beautiful things with extension methods is I can keep the API simple, but provide extension methods that give you a lot of flexibility based on what your actual needs are. So we have that. One of the other things I want to show you while I'm in the actual Prism Maui repo is in the builder. So Prism for Xamarin Forms had introduced a iBehavior factory, and we shipped a default implementation that added a number of different behaviors to those pages. Some of them were global to every page. Some of them were specific to a specific type of page. But I've kind of done away a little bit with that in Prism Maui. So there's not a factory necessarily anymore. Instead, what I've done is I've made it very, very simple for you, where you have some extension methods that, again, you can do this off of iService collection. You can do it off of the iContainer registry. And I can say, like, here we have this navigation page, and we have the navigation page system go back behavior from Prism. And, this is giving me that filter. So anytime I have a navigation page, we're going to get this navigation page system go back behavior being applied to it by the Prism navigation service. And then these other ones down here, like the page lifecycle aware behavior, that is going to be applied to every single page. And if you need to, have some sort of delegate with the container and kind of, build things out a little bit, you can do that. There are some extension methods that kind of give you that flexibility to be very creative with what you're doing, or to keep it very, very simple like this. But this is a nice little enhancement on that API. So I think you'll definitely like that. One of the other things that you'll see here is there's a controls namespace with a Prism navigation page. So this is something that is new in Prism Maui. I'll probably actually backport this, honestly. But what this kind of does is, like I said before, by default, we add a navigation page with the navigation page key to the registry. So that way you can navigate to it without having to explicitly register it. We take care of that for you, but we actually register the Prism navigation page. And so what that does is it hooks into that back button pressed event. And then we go ahead and we immediately tell the system to cancel and not to go back. And instead, what we do is we call the page navigation service, or the iNavigation service, I should say, and then we call go back. So that way the navigation service for that specific page is handling the go back rather than the system. And then that allows you to hook into things like Prism's iConfirm navigation. So you can, say, hey, no, we actually can't go back because I have a form that they're filling out and they haven't said yes, or I can do that asynchronously, and I can pop up a dialogue. That way they can confirm what they want to do. So you have a lot of different capabilities of what to do here. And you can, it is a public class. So if you are developing, instead of inheriting from a navigation page, if you want to update that to Prism navigation page, you'll be able to do that very, very easily. So that is just like another one of those very subtle things that I think is going to make your life a lot easier. Another thing that I did cover in the blog was that you can actually now do things like have a page that gets registered like with multiple view models. And there's a lot of different use cases where you might want to do that. One that kind of comes to mind, I had a client that had multiple teams that had like a billing page, and each team would have to provide slightly different implementations of a view model on that same page, but they wanted the consistent UI. And this is going to now allow you to do that type of thing with Prism. And I do see a question about special render. No, there's no special render on this. So all it does, it's all, kind of a core logic around the navigation page. I really try to keep Prism as much platform agnostic as possible. You will actually notice, like if I open up the project, you will see that, there is a, right now I'm multi-targeting Net 6.0, Net Android, and then Windows. And that really is only to address a few issues that I've kind of found in development with the navigation service. And those are bugs that will hopefully be fixed in service release 2 or 3. By the time we kind of get from the bug report to it getting on the roadmap and getting pushed out. So hopefully by SR2 or 3, some of those bugs will go away. And then we would be dropping the Android and the Windows target, and it would just be a Net 6.0. So I don't want Prism to be the library that limits you to what platform that you can do. So, we get Tizen kind of for free now. But, if somebody comes out with a brand new platform, whatever that platform is, I want you to be able to take Maui, Prism Maui to it. As long as it supports Maui, that's all I care about. So that's kind of the goal as we develop this. And with that, and I know we're kind of running short on time. Whew, I'm talking like crazy. So there is a demo app, which I won't have a whole lot of time to go into, but you can find this up on my GitHub. I did publish it a little bit earlier. And this is from kind of the template that we've come out with, where I added a Prism startup. Hopefully by now you kind of see that the Prism startup is not actually a required class. What it is it keeps that stupidly small. So this is very easy to read as I'm looking at my Create Maui app, because I just pass in a static method for that delegate. And then I can build out the Maui app builder and it just keeps things very, very clean and in their own kind of separate area to work on. But over here, I can come in. I have some additional methods because I did try to keep things very simple for people. So we have like a configure logging. So you can get that logging builder off of the Maui app builder, and you can provide a delegate directly for that if you want to. You have all those different methods here. You'll notice here, I actually just did, hey, go to the login page. So you have that capability here. We kept things very, very simple. I have this base services class that I register as a scoped service. So that means every time I create a new page, I'm going to get a new instance with all my services in there. And then I have this register instance for some of the different things that come from Maui, kind of essentials, or, like this is devices. This is in the application model, so they're, or accessibility, but these are things that you traditionally would have seen, I think probably more in essentials here, but you get that, and these are now registered and we can use them in our app here. Again, we are doing some Prism modules, so we have 2 different modules that got registered, but here we actually say that the core app is going to be initialized on demand. We didn't specify here. This one is kind of just when available. So as soon as the application starts up, our authentication module gets initialized. Any services or pages in it get registered with a container. But if I try to access anything from the core app module, it won't be available until I manually go and load that module. So what kind of the flow, before I run it real quick, the flow is, I log in, I go to kind of a splash page, and then that splash page kind of goes, oh, okay, you're authenticated. And now let's go ahead and load the module and go to our main page. So that's the basic app flow. But what you'll notice in the core app, and again, sorry that the right side is so small, but you'll notice that this main page is actually, there's no XAML. I know everybody says, Dan, I thought you said you're supposed to use XAML. And, probably most of the time you should, but you don't always have to use XAML. And the other thing is, you'll notice that there is no view model for it. So I've specifically disabled the view model locator here. I don't have a view model for it because I don't need it, right? So you want to try to build an app that is going to meet your needs, not that is just trying to fit inside of some box, whether it's MVVM or anything else. This is just a little bit of code that's entirely about layout logic and kind of how to handle that. So the idea here is if we're running on a TV or a desktop, if we're on a tablet, we're going to get a desktop view that's kind of the side-by-side view. And if we're mobile, we're going to have just a list, and then we'll navigate to a detail page. And so with that, let me just kind of run this real quick so we see what's going on. Of course, everyone wants to message me while I'm doing this.
Don't worry about that. So while he's also participating, right? So it's fine. Oh. So while you launch the Android emulator, there is a question about any update on support for Comet?
I have no idea what's going on with Comet right now. I know Prism itself is never going to support Comet. It really is about MVVM. It's entirely possible, things like the dependency injection, the event aggregator, stuff like that. Maybe we could use the Prism core for some other library that is Comet specific. But there has to be demand for that. And the reality of it is, at the end of the day, I need paying clients who say, we want this, because I only have so much time and I can't do everything for free. course, this is going to take forever to build and deploy today. What in the world? You know, any other time it would have deployed already. I think it has stage fright.
Yeah, you had to have the demo effect, right? That need to take longer than ever. And
I think this is the longest I've ever waited.
well, don't worry, no rush. You still have time.
Yeah. It's a good thing there's nobody after me. So, you know, I needed that last session to end early so I would have enough time to do this here.
Yeah, you have enough time. Also, we started a little bit earlier because the previous session ended before expected. So you can have a little bit of more time too if you need it.
Let's see here. Launch. All right, there we go. All right, so we have this app. Now this is, there is no actual authentication. I want to just say that. So you don't have to configure anything. This is a dummy button. It looks really pretty, like I'm going to authenticate with Microsoft or Google, but it's just a button. It doesn't do anything. It is, however, connected to a command, which actually I should probably show off for anybody who may not be familiar with this in Prism. So Prism does have the delegate command. And of course, you can provide a delegate to kind of return your is busy. And so you see that I do have like an is busy Boolean in here that I immediately toggle to true when that command is executing. And so I just simply return, you know, whenever we're not busy, you know, we can execute. And then the other thing is we're going to observe the property is busy. And is busy comes from the view model base, by the way, which is why you don't see the property in here. But again, we're just simulating an authentication call. So we have a task delay, but there is no actual business. There's no service or anything for anything here. We're keeping it very simple. And then we do an absolute navigation. You know, we add this navigation segment for the splash screen. We add a parameter, authenticated is true, and then we navigate. So we keep it very, very simple there. And with that, let me just kind of go back, kind of click this button here. And boom, now you get this list of Maui developers and influencers. So we'll click on this guy that I'm sure nobody's heard of before. And we get, you know, now our kind of detail page. And we see that we have this page-based navigation. You know, we've taken advantage of services like the iLauncher that we inject into the view model. So that way we can go to GitHub here. And, you know, again, I can kind of go back and we have that, like I said, we have that page-based navigation. So that's things that you would kind of expect. Not the kind of thing that you would typically use regions for, but where we can use regions and make things a lot more dynamic. And I guess I probably should have showed this before. Our detail is actually just a grid. Our influencers is just a collection view. So, you know, those aren't pages that we're navigating to. That's all using region navigation. And what gets really exciting about this is now when I run this on Windows, and hopefully it won't take, you know, a year to load like Android here. So we'll get that going. See which window it's going to pop up on. Of course, it's going to pop up over here. So there's a fun little bug in Maui right there. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on that. We'll get our kind of get our navigation. So now you notice that we kind of have like this little divider here. And, you know, that's really for our scroll because we have our collection view right here, which of course is scrollable. And then over here, this is just a content view that's empty at the moment, doesn't have anything. But again, we're going to use that region navigation. So it's now going to notice in our view model that the other region exists. And instead of using page navigation, we're going to use region navigation. And so now we get a different experience where instead we get this side-by-side effect. We still have the ability to click on these links. We still have our iLauncher. Of course, it'll go on the other screen. Why wouldn't it? So we see that we got John Dick's GitHub page, clicked on that link. So all of the things that we know and we love from Maui, we still have access to. We can use dependency injection throughout everything. And we can create this really rich dynamic experience where we keep things very, very simple with regions and then dynamically build our pages and our navigation patterns based on whether we're on a desktop platform, whether we're on a mobile platform, and kind of what is going to make the most sense visually. I know this is not the prettiest thing in the world. Look, I'm not Zam Girl. She develops beautiful things. I'm the guy that says there's 16 colors, man. That's all I got for you. But anyway, I hope that this is helpful. I hope kind of this, unconventional demo kind of helps unlock some different ways of looking at how you build apps. How you can kind of use Prism modularity to break up your logic in your code base, so that way, like you see here, we have an authentication module. All that code gets self-contained, much easier to work on and task out. And then just like I said, using kind of introducing regions, which is kind of now out of box supported in Prism Maui.
Can you showcase very quickly the code, the container page hosting the regions?
For like that main page?
Yeah.
Yep. So this is like that was all in that code-based main page. So in here, what we did was we disabled the view model locator because no reason for it. Went ahead, just set the title. And then we have our iDevice info and our region manager that we inject. We kind of build out that list region. So we kind of set that just to a property that we can reuse. Excuse me. And then we kind of set, because we're not doing this in XAML, right? So if I was going to do this in XAML, typically, you would see something like this. And instead, we're doing this in code. So what we do is we are just setting a bindable property. So we go to the bindable property, set the value, and that kind of readies that content view up as a region. One other thing actually I did not show, which I probably should, is when the core app gets initialized and resolved, what we do is we inject the region manager into it, and then we call this register view with region. And so here I can say in this influencer list region, I want to navigate to the Maui influencers. And so when it creates the region, it's automatically going to populate that view for us. We don't have to do anything else. That's why you don't see any kind of region navigation here. All we did was we initialized that region. And then we simply set the content of the page based on the device idiom. So if any of those idioms are true, we return the desktop view. Otherwise, we return the mobile view. I kind of did like a little hack, which I never actually tested. No, it's a great thing to admit to, right? But theoretically, like if you were on a tablet, maybe you want to dynamically switch that to the mobile view if you're in portrait, desktop if you're not. So you could play with things like that here. And then for the create desktop view, it's just simply a grid with two columns. We add that list region that we initialized in the constructor, and then we add a new content view where we initialize that with
Yeah.
region name there. And that's basically it.